So Anna and I have both been working on directory delegation support for Linux. So it's a V4.1 feature that nobody's implemented yet, except for Rick Macklin. We just got out an implementation of BSD. So we're also working with Dave Novik upstream to revise the spec. As we were implementing some of this, we found that, for instance, there was a lot of information that the original spec wanted a lot of information about directory position information, things like that, when new entries were created, and we can't easily provide those on Linux. Because directory offsets are sort of hard to do, and the kernel general doesn't care about them. So anyway, I've finally finished up a patch that I think is probably close to mergeable. It starts by just creating, by adding support for only recallable directory delegations. So you can set a lease on a directory, and we can do a get dir delegation call server, get the directory delegation, and then if something happens to change it, it'll recall it. Those turn out not to be very useful. At least I don't think they are, because Anna disagrees, but I didn't think they would be useful, but she seems to think that they may actually be useful. So in any case, we've got that first, and then after that, I layer on CP notify support, so you can go and so we get notifications. Someone doesn't create in a directory. FS notify will call back to NFSD at that point, and then we do spool up a CP notify call and send it to the client. So the way it works is you can set this lease, and then I have some support in there for allowing you to ignore certain events. So as part of this, we have to set flags in when we're breaking the lease to say why we're breaking this lease. So like if you want to create, we'll say, okay, this is a create, so that way certain leases that want notifications instead of breaking the lease can ignore that event and then just wait for the notification call. So it's about 38 patches. I've just respun the set to add or to reorder most of the PFS patches first. My hope is I can maybe send that as a separate series, or maybe we can just get Christian to merge the first chunk of the series or whatever. Do that. He's okay on board. I need to start lobbying him and Al. I had Al and Christian look at it about a year ago, and they were okay with the recallable parts. I don't think the rest of it will probably be too controversial, but we'll see. There's a little bit of changes we need for an FS notify too, but Jan seems to be on board already. He's already patched. It's okay. So I think we're in good shape on the BFS parts as long as I can get Christian's hack. The NFST parts we could, it's another pile, and I guess once we get the BFS commitment to take the BFS parts, I guess we'll chuck it work.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that just looks like XDR.
Yeah, a lot of it is, but there's a lot of group for handling callbacks from FS Notify, and there's some changes to the FAttr support, the way we encode FAttrs, because in this, a lot of our FAttr support requires, or expects you to have a SVC request, thread content, NFSD thread context, and we don't have that here. So you get this callback in the context of the thing that's making the change.
So what parts of the request are needed? I assume user credentials. What else?
What do you mean? What parts? What do you mean? What parts?
Why is an SVC request passed in?
The main thing that's only missing now is mainly you need it for. There's a few places where it just was using it because it was convenient to find things, and I've got some workarounds there to sort of make that okay. File handle support, or encoding file handles usually wants an export, and we don't have that here. So we have to. So I have to. But the only thing we need for the export is whether you need a connectable file handle. And so I can. When we get the directory delegation, I store whether that's the parent or whether that directory has a connectable file handle, and or whether that open file is a connectable file handle, and then we just inherit that for all the child entries. So So there's all good. So I think the way I've got the file handle part worked out is okay. The main thing we lack at this point is ownership info. Can't send, that's all, that may require a call into IDMAPD, and that's all requires SVC requests stuff right now. It's all plugged through there. So if we want to add ownership support, that's going to take some rework of all the mapping stuff. So, but that can be done in a later phase. I don't think it's necessarily required.
Yeah, I think that problem is mostly due to the fact that with an NFSV4 compound, we often save a lot of the processing of the operation until the encoding step.
Yes.
And it's a giant layering violation in most cases.
Yeah.
It sounds like this one is too.
Yeah.
Um,
So that may take some work to get if you want to add that at some point. Because ideally, what would be nice is if you had enough. If you had enough that you could actually do a stat without having to contact the server at all, right? You know, you could set everything in notify that you can do to do a full stat. Because then you have everything when you don't server.
do you think there's a convenient dividing line that you can break besides the VFS patches versus the NFSD patches? Do you think there are other convenient dividing lines in that patch series?
We could do the recallable ones first.
Yeah.
So that would be the option. Other options to break this into more like 4 sets. Do the very basic lease changes.
That's generally my preference is to do the basic stuff first and make sure it's a good firm foundation.
Usually I do that. My theory was, or my assumption, maybe wrong, was that they were not typically helpful because we are the timeout that the client has for directory attributes is fairly long. And
That's
so-
the interesting stuff is whether it causes regression in the existing code. So
yeah, that's part of it too. So,
even if it didn't provide much of a benefit, I would still say breaking it into basic versus the more advanced cases
okay.
is a good idea.
All right. Well, I'll plan to break it into 2 sets then, at least, or maybe 4 even. Right. I'll do a VFS set and then an FSD set, and another VFS set.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. I'll plan to do that. So anyway, that's where I'm at. I had done some client patches earlier for this, but I handed them off to Anna, so I'll let her take on that.
Yeah, so I picked those apart, reworked them, fixed a whole bunch of bugs that I found along the way, just because it was basic scaffolding stuff. So I've got recallable delegations pretty much ready to go and working well. Like I said, I disagree with them that they're not useful. Just testing XFS tests on my own laptop, I see a couple minutes speed up how quickly they run. I've gone back and forth before and after enabling that. And the difference is there every time I re-enable it. So I think even just plain recallable will see some benefit. Had some trouble on the notification side, just getting the changes to stick and show up. Like removing the file by new LS after trying to delete it through every VFS function I can find still shows up there. So I'm still working out like the right functions to call that actually make it look like it takes effect. So a little more time for notifications, I will complain.
Okay. That's fine. So that's another good reason that maybe we can merge both the client and server part and basic part first.
So the notification stuff is only for unnotified. The delegations are actually useful for caching.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think if you have a directory and you have a lease on it, and someone does a create, then you can avoid having to do a lookup or anything. Basically, the idea of the notifications is that we're pre-populating the cache.
Yeah, but you don't know. You have no idea if you care.
Right. You may not care at all. Yeah. And so
I was thinking as for the bare minimum, like at least on the client side to start the FSID and file ID, basically the bare reader, not a reader plus response, just so that it's there. If the applications want something more, we can request it after.
I mean, the thing about notifications is that you cannot trust them. You cannot. I mean, the fact that it gave you the lookup sort of 2 minutes ago doesn't mean that the file still exists. Doesn't mean that it has the same name. It doesn't mean that
nope.
So you cannot avoid the lookup, you cannot avoid the open, you cannot avoid anything.
If there is a way
You
for you
can,
to.
you can avoid the lookup, you just can try it,
Is it
we don't
easiest?
reuse file handles, so it's not like, either your file handle is still there.
But a rename doesn't change the problem.
Sure, right, but if you're, but you get the info about the rename, right? So,
Is it easy for you to squash that together? Like the server sees a create, then a rename.
yeah,
File,
that's
so
it.
you just do
Yes.
create the new name.
Yeah, essentially what happens is, as the calls come in from FS Notify, we do a little allocation. And I take a, entry reference, take some references basically, and then we call the callback. And the callback's prepare function then goes and spools up the actual info it needs in the opaque part. So in the CP notify, there's an opaque section that does the notification of that part. I do in the prepare and deletes all the references or whatever, and then we go and send it all off and ship it off. So yeah, it's not too hard to. So basically, yeah, if there are things happening in quick succession, they may very well get squished into the same. Right.
Will they be one notification or still every step along the way?
You would see every step along the way. It's just it may come all in one TV notify call. Because there's a way for you to send several. Right now, though, the size of the call we can send is pretty small. It's only the client or the server is limited to a single page for the set that it's doing to the client. That's something we can do. So that's a limitation. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at, I guess. I guess for the client, are you still doing you're still doing it when after the first validation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's probably the right thing to do, I think. So first, when you're first traverse into a directory, if it's directory static, we don't care about a delegation. But
when we go to revalidate a directory, that could be an indication that we're using it, and that delegation would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, any operation creates, certainly any create, I would advocate doing for links as well. So we fix the problem with our lines RF.
yeah,
Like anytime we're working within a directory, basically creators are.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know what to do about opens because those can be sort of single events. There's nothing really that sort of says that I opened a file this directory. That means I'm going to open several more.
yeah.
But maybe a CHD could be good. If you see that the current,
Current working directory.
current working directory is set to this one, then you should probably do it.
Okay, that's an idea.
Writing this down and trying
What
it.
we did now is just on a revalidation basis. So that kind of indicates that you've been, we're not a drive-by basically. We actually revalidate.
That can happen fairly frequently because we have things like weaker validation, and just general dendritic revalidation, which will force another lookup.
Sure, right. Yeah, again, that's probably the hardest part of this whole thing is figuring out when to request one of these subjects because they're actually fairly heavyweight on the server, especially once you start factoring in notifications. So it's we don't want to do this on every directory.
I think directory notifications, which really let the application decide by saying on it, I notify or denotify or whatever.
Okay.
Because it's mainly useful for browser type applications, those those are the things that typically care about sort of getting notified on a regular basis when everything changes.
Okay.
I wrote that down.
But the directory delegation, on the other hand, those
Broad.
yeah, those are more about caching. So
One thing this is probably something I'll have to run by Christian, but I went ahead and left it the ability for user land to request a direct release. I don't know that we want to actually expose that as users to this. There's really no reason you couldn't run settings on a direct file.
no, I agree that would be
I thought some of my ones.
yeah. I agree. That's why we have it for the file case in the first place.
Yeah. So I've kind of left that in for the moment, but you may want to pull the plug on that until we have some more, demand user land for it.
Yeah, I suspect some of the case will be made rather for it.
Probably.
For instance.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Yeah, so anyway, that's not all I've got.
So the other thing is you're kind of gated on when you can push this, right? Because you're wanting 8081 BIS changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm coding it to Dave's draft, basically. I mean, but the changes are fairly small. I mean, it's just a
They're
setup.
still over the wire changes.
They're still over the wire changes, but they are, there's really just a new set of expert flags in the notify mask. And there are, and we don't have any implementations out in the field other than Rick's.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the rules that I've been told the
Yeah.
community uses, you can't integrate until you have a draft.
Yeah. Well, that's another good reason we could use just the recall something first. It's those aren't affected. Yeah, if we want to do this first. So we could easily just do those. That's another good reason to do this. So that maybe we'll hold off on doing notifications until the draft is.
Sure.
Or,
Well,
Works right. I'll
88
hold off on merging.
8881, this is a working group draft, is it not?
But it's not, it's been the case with.
We've integrated with personal drafts before, so
Yeah.
the only thing that bottom line for us to integrate is having something submitted. And it could be a personal draft, a work group draft.
When I was doing 4.2, it was still.
But I'm still in favor of doing the simpler step first.
Okay. I'll break it up. Yeah. I probably should have had this done about a year ago. If that was the way we were wanting to go. But, oh well, that's all right. So we'll get that in. The one question I had, and this is probably more of a question for Rick really, is 8081 BIS says there's a flag in there for directory ordering. Yeah, the notify for C flag order. Do we want to, or what's the right thing for the server to do if the client requests that and we can't support it? Do we refuse the delegation? Or refuse the notifications in that case? Or do we just offer it and assume that the client? We would have here, so just return delegation.
Probably refuse the notification.
Yeah, I'm trying to debate, because I'm pretty sure his client will send that. Right now, I just ignore it. I'll just go ahead and give you one anyway.
Well, Rick's with us now.
Yeah, that's why I was asking if you was, can you hear us, Rick? You could hear us a little bit.
Yep.
Okay.
I think Dave's current proposal, which is a little bit similar to what I proposed, is that the server will offer some subset of what the client asks. So if the client asks for position information, the server can't easily do it. It simply offers to do less. And if the client doesn't like that, it can return the delegation.
Okay, that's pretty much what we've got now then. So good, I'll have to make these changes. Great, okay, thanks. Yeah, anybody have questions or anything or more comments?
My only other question was, does it make sense to have a toggle on the client to disable this, or should it just always be on? I'd either hide it behind a cake and pick option to start, or you initially did it with the module parameter,
We did that, yeah. It's been a while.
but I don't currently have right now.
Yeah,
That doesn't sound like Jeff.
I probably did. I mean, I'm sure I slapped the client.
Or I could hide it behind SysFS. That's a toggle there.
So given that we have zero implementation experience with it, we definitely want a switch.
Yeah.
Of some sort.
Runtime, build time?
Runtime.
Probably runtime so that distros can enable it.
And also people, when somebody gets on the list and says, oh no, this is doing terrible things to my server.
Yes.
Yeah, they can turn it off.
So I'll start it with probably in SysFS disabled to off, or like defaulted to off. And eventually in a year, 2 years, we can default it to on. If people start using it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Ben will want to give us a mount option for it. A year or something like that.
That's the tricky part of SysFS is that you can't configure it until after it's mounted.
That's for the directory delegation, so we see that we're using.
That might be a good reason to go with the module option, actually. So that way you can configure it at plug in time, and then you never will request one.
I think there might be a clever way to use UDEV rules to configure it, but I haven't looked at that. I haven't tried it. But that would look like something. You generate a UDEV event for the mount happening, and then your script put the switches during the mount. But that still doesn't help you if the behavior you're trying to change, you want to change it during the mount.
Yeah, I would say I like the module option idea, just with the idea that we pull the plug on that. Just have some more granular switching. Yeah. But right now, I imagine it will just be like you either want to use them or don't.
Yeah, I was thinking global to the client.
Yeah.
Per amount.
That's what I was thinking. But I don't know, I mean, we have rules around deprecating module options that are that ABI. I don't know. Do we know?
And we still have the module option to turn off 64-bit. I don't think that's all.
I think when we turn them off, we just have to leave them like the part validly parsed, right? Not necessarily respond to. Or am I mistaken on?
Most recently, there was the module option for local I/O that it actually got removed, even though I did submit a version that preserved it but did nothing with it. Just on an ABI, if somebody were to write to it, they wouldn't get a failure, it just wouldn't do anything. But the version that landed upstream just removed it entirely, which I'm totally fine with because I don't think anybody was toggling that thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't old enough.
Yeah.
So model option might be less optimal because it will require rebooting the machine, which on bigger clusters is less practical than just disable on a fly.
You can change it in SysFS.
Yeah.
And we could do, not everything is dynamically settable in SysFS, but this could be easily.
Okay, so if it's settable to SysFS, it's nice. If it will require reloading module, it will be harder to get on the production machine.
Yeah, if you want to, like if the user sees it's causing problems, wants to turn it off.
Yeah, all module options are reflected in sys kernel or sys modules
Parameters.
Yeah.
So you can make them read only, you can make them read write. You can make them read write.
Yeah, just
User-
be easy.
If the user turns it off, should they just automatically return all the delegations too, or just wait for them to be recalled or?
Probably return them. Because someone's going to turn it off because they're having trouble. And that probably means you want to get rid of your delegations. I would think,
I mean, some way of finding that.
Yeah, how does that? It probably doesn't matter too much one or the other.
Yeah.
So, just in case kind of switch anyway.
You should be able to find. I think you mentioned at one point, adding high and best tests.
I did, I sent some this past week.
Okay.
They're still very basic though, so,
Are we adding them under the V41?
yeah.
Okay, we're not adding a new 42.
No, these are 4-1 spec.
Oh, that's right.
This is, 8881,
Is-
yeah, okay.
Is there a
So-
4-2 high-end?
I don't think there is, and honestly, we don't really need a separate directory
Yeah.
for 4-2.
This just-
So
We
extra stuff on
We
top.
changed Pi NFS a while back to advertise that it was doing 4-2. We just did we didn't set any flags necessarily. But
So can you tell us a little about what tests have been implemented and maybe you have plans for more?
yeah, they're very basic right now. They just check and, they will, I have one that will request a directory delegation. And then it has another client that spins up another client that then goes and creates a file and then just checks that you get the call back. But it doesn't check very much info in the callback right now. So I need to go in and probably add some that's checking.
Rick has his hand up.
Oh, hey, Rick, go ahead. Sorry.
All I was going to say is I'm not sure that Dave's current draft states it that way, but I think we can assume that the server issues them at its discretion, just like open delegations.
Yeah, I think
in other
so.
words, you could flip them on and off anytime you want, and when you're flipped off, the get dear delegation just fails.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
sure
that-
you want it
that's-
to fail.
Yeah, that's my concern with identifying here too, if we require this to try to acquire the sender, because the server could just end up refusing you, and I'm not sure what we do with that case. Or you could just lose your delegation. What do you do at that point with identifying, right? You set up your notifications, the server recalls it all of a sudden, and now what do you do with the identified marks and stuff?
I think there's a difference there between the delegation and the notification.
Okay.
Delegations are recallable. Can't remember if notifications are actually recallable.
They're tied together. You get a directory delegation, and as part of that, you get the notifications. If you recall your directory delegations, you don't get any notifications.
Well, they were subtly separate, but I hope not. I hope.
No, they're not.
It didn't seem that way when I got this stuff.
No, it's just that you get a directory delegation, and as part of that, it allows notifications instead of recalls.
Yeah, but notifications turn off the recall for certain
Sure.
operations, right?
Right, exactly, yes.
Which means that it makes it completely useless for caching purposes.
No, I mean,
Yes, it does, because it's not synchronous anymore.
it's not synchronous, but I mean, our information about directories is already saved, right? We revalidate on a 30 to 60 second timer.
Except when we sort of know that that the directory has changed some way or another.
Sure.
Or we don't trust the directory, or
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is true. It's basically useless. Basically makes it useless if it cannot rely on the directory being called for certain operations, for the operations that are being operated.
As far as I can tell, the spec is written as an either or thing. We're either, for a particular event, we either recall the delegation or you notify on it.
Right, and the client is the one that decides, yes.
Right, sorry.
Okay, so what I was going to say, when useless, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about directory blocks like read dir replies, you're right. You need lots of information for that, and you need to keep it up to date. When it comes to caching name lookups, I don't think it's so important because after all, right now, we basically do it approximately when we notice the directory modified time changes, then we figure the cached entry is no longer valid. The current code I'm running, I know I talked about the other stuff, but the current code I'm running is basically just using the directory delegations and the notifies to maintain name caching. And it seems to work quite well. I yesterday did a test against Jeff's server, and all it was unrolling a tarball and then doing a make in it, and it dropped the number of lookups by about 35% because it no longer and the attributes by about 8 to 10%. Basically, it no longer has to worry about the cached entries becoming invalidated because it'll either get a notify or it'll get a recall. And I think that's good enough for many cases anyhow.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's been my experience and how it works too. So
Yeah, but the main reason for wanting a delegation there is to avoid the refresh of lookups after you've changed something in the directory.
correct.
And if the notifications are set up, then so that you only get only get notified sort of every X seconds, whatever that is, you cannot trust that your cache is valid at any
I was
given
planning to
time.
set the notification delay to 0.
But
that's what
that
I'm
only
doing.
applies when it's a different client.
Yeah.
Right now, we aren't even generating notifies for same client because the client already knows it added an entry or removed an entry. It's only when another client adds or removes an entry that the notifies matter. And without delegations, you're only going to notice that sooner or later when you notice the directory attributes have changed, modified time or whatever.
No. Every time I create a file, I have to invalidate all my negative entries because I know that the change attribute on the directory has changed, and there's pretty much no implementations out there that do atomic updates of the change attribute.
Yes, but once you have a directory delegation, you know that you're either going to go to notify or a recall.
Yeah, but
so you don't
notify
have to worry about the negative entries, except the fact that they won't be completely up to date. But they aren't completely up to date now because of modified time resolution on the directory, et cetera, and so forth. So I suppose if you want to be really nitpicky about it, maybe you do have to do what you're doing because they're asynchronous. But I don't think in most cases, the fact that another client added the foo just after, and you still have a negative entry for foo for a very short period of time, that's going to matter very much. It's the same story as write sharing. It's uncommon. And I'm not sure that anyone expects it to be completely up to date. Just my opinion.
Yeah, mine too. I think it's, once you've got the directory delegation and if you create a file in that directory, you don't need to invalidate your cache anymore because no one else has done it because you would have either gotten a notification about it, like you said, or you got, or you didn't, right? Or you got the call if somebody else were to change it. We can cross that bridge later, I guess.
Yeah.
Right?
We're not starting.
For now, we'll start with the recallable only ones, and then we can haggle over the notification bits and things. So
Sync up again next week.
yeah, next week I'll maybe have a little bit more experience with this too. I'd be interested to see if adding notifications over recall only notifications improves or changes the performance. And
Yes.
that'd be an interesting thing to see. Okay, cool. Any other questions or comments? All right, thanks, guys. They're off recording now, I guess. All right.